Welcome back for another 5 Tool Productions podcast. I'm going to be the host for this one. I'm your man, Jake. That's Kyle, and that's Connor.
Hello.
All right.
Tips Fedora.
Hi, Jake.
All right, we're going to have a little podcastception for this here podcast. We are going to be talking about podcasts.
Apropos.
You sure could say that. Alrighty. So podcasts in the year 2023, moving into 2024, almost there, people, almost there, has grown exponentially. I have a couple fun stats. Who doesn't like a couple fun stats?
Hit us. I'm ready.
Right. So let's just talk about the global market for podcasts. Initially at the year of 2023, it was $20 billion. Now we're at $26 billion in podcasts.
With a B?
Yeah, with a big old B. Big
That's
old
wild.
B. Pretty crazy.
Man, Manscaped's been doing amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, purple mattress, Manscaped,
It's amazing stuff.
NordVPN.
Yeah.
Does
Oh,
it
yeah.
Breathe. What's the other? The mindfulness
Oh,
one.
yeah,
that they
mine's...
love?
Oh, the one
The
where they just
therapy
play
one
the
too.
little like green noise and the.
It is crazy, though.
I do. Those are relaxing. Those
That's
quick 30
wild.
seconds commercials. Like they tell you to take a break. Anyways, midway through the year of 2023, globally, there were 464.7 million listeners on a day-to-day
I thought you were going
basis.
to say podcasts in general.
I
was like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, everyone's in it.
Yeah.
And that number is predicted to grow to 504.9 million by the end of this year going into 2024. You know, we do podcasts here, if you couldn't tell.
We do.
And when you hear numbers like this and you try to, visualize how many people that is, you can't. You just physically cannot. So I was kind of I'm going to call you two the podcast gurus around here.
We did it.
Just because you guys seem to always be involved in podcasts one way or another. Let's start with you, Connor. What does it take to get a podcast done?
To get a podcast done, I mean, I think how we present it to either clients or just talk about it internally is you can go from 0 to 100 really fast. Whether you're talking about equipment, whether you're talking about what you're delivering to the audience, and what you're talking about what you want the podcast to be as a whole. And we could, there's other podcasts that we've done about similar topics and blog posts and whatnot, but you can either do pretty easy stuff, that's not too hard. You have to bring in people from the outside that you can do it yourself, monitor yourself, and put a pretty good product. Or you can put some time into it, some effort into it, and some money into it, unfortunately. And get even, not a better product, but the quality goes up, So that's really up to you. But to get a podcast going, I think the one main thing you really have to have is just drive. You have to have people who are behind the project, behind the podcast, who want to be there, who see the vision and know what they want to get done.
Yeah.
I mean, even to jump on that, it's the why. Like, why you want to do a podcast?
Yes.
If you just want to do a podcast because, hey, you want an excuse to talk with your buddies and you want to have a little bit of fun, that's a perfectly good reason to do a podcast. Maybe you don't invest in a ton of equipment. Maybe you don't worry about doing some stuff that's wild. But it really goes into why are you doing it and understanding what podcasts can do and what they can't do, especially in 2023. Like you're seeing those stats out there. I mean, what's it, like 7 in 10 Americans are aware of podcasting at this point? It's kind of wild of how many people really do understand podcasts. But then when you keep diving into the stats, and I hate to jump on you if you were going to say this, but the top 10% of podcasts get 150 downloads in the first 7 days. That's the top 10.
Yeah.
So the amount of podcasts that you said out there, the top 10% of that only get 150 downloads. So you can't expect podcasts to be, I'm going to be the next Rogan because me and my two buddies are funny as hell.
Because we have some great stories that we want to tell.
And especially when it comes to the business side, because it's still a niche audience. You need to understand who's going to listen to you, when they're going to listen to you, and why they're going to listen to you. So really, to get started, you need to have a firm reason of why you're doing a podcast.
I think you bring up a great point there, and it's kind of where I'm going to head next here, which is the business aspect of podcasting. We obviously are currently doing a podcast, but we also have clients come in and do podcasts within our podcast room. So when we think about that, who really should be looking from a business aspect, who should be looking to doing podcasts in the year 2024?
Yeah, I think actually to hop off what Kyle said, it is a niche audience when you really get into who is listening. Because if you're not the Rogans, if you're not the cast of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, no one's gonna I shouldn't say nobody, but it's hard to stumble across a new podcast and say, I'm going to be a fan right now today. You have to listen to it, So to produce a podcast, to put it out to people, you have to have either an established audience or you have to have something worth talking about, something that people want to sit down and listen to. So, I think just off the top of my head, it's very easy to say, universities, like colleges, universities around the country, whatever. What are they called? Organizations that have an audience that, again, would want to learn something from someone.
Nonprofits.
Yeah, nonprofits.
Yes.
I'm thinking medical spaces where there's experts on topics that you wouldn't run into in the grocery store. Why am I going to listen to this episode? What am I going to learn from it? Who will I meet? I'm thinking of alumni, thinking of people who have interacted with your organization or your university who have something to give back to the audience that is listening.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I mean, Connor gave a really detailed answer. My answer is everyone. I mean, podcasts at the end of the day are content. Content it's valuable.
Content's king.
Content is king
Let's
online. Especially as they continue to learn more and more of how to make it discoverable, make it transcripts, stuff like that. Like
Right.
Podcasts are extremely cheap way to create engaging content that works. I think one of the big things is make sure you're using video. Content's great, audio is great. It's still a visual sandbox. People want to see stuff. They want to hear stuff. They like to interact. They like to look into eyes and see who's talking and stuff like that. So the more you can utilize that type of stuff, I think it matters. But it also goes back to understanding your why, understanding your boat, right? Your budget, your objective, your audience, and your timeline really matters for what you're doing with a podcast. So if you understand that stuff, everyone should do it. Podcasts really are helpful. You don't need a giant audience. You don't need to be It's Always Sunny. You don't need to be Rogan. Mm-hmm. You could have an audience of 20 people, but if they're the right 20 people that are really digesting your content, I mean, a medical supply company doesn't have to sell to everyone. They need to sell to like 20 hospitals. And if you can get the right chief operating officer listening to your podcast, it matters. One of our clients that we use actually does that, where like what they offer is huge and it goes to a wide range of people. But what they're podcast for is the actual decision makers and the purchasers who will buy their stuff. So who they're talking to is that type of stuff, which means it's a very small audience and it's very bright of how they're trying to do it. But you don't need to always shoot for, I'm going viral. We're going to be the next Barstool. I'm going to be call her daddy. They're going to be call me Mr. Podcast. That's not what we're shooting for.
It's not even a good title. I mean, no one will listen to that. Come on, guys.
Oh.
I think that's great. I think there's great takeaways from both of y'all. Y'all just killed it. Y'all absolutely, this was a fun, quick podcast about podcasts.
You brought the two podcast gurus in. We're laying down knowledge.
That's kind of what I thought going into this. So content is king, and everyone should be getting into podcasting. Wait, what else is there to say? You guys absolutely killed it. This is Kyle. And this is Connor, and I'm Jake. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to another podcast here at 5 Tool Productions. We'll see y'all next time.